The man behind Howard the Duck takes over Daredevil. What does that really mean? What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an irate review, the show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you need to go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The book that I want to talk about right now is Daredevil Number One from Marvel Comics, written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Marco Checchetto. So this is a brand new introduction to the Daredevil character, which we are all too familiar with from the Netflix TV shows and many, many decades of actual comic books, with prolific writers, of course, like Charles Soule, and of course people like Frank Miller and Stan Lee, and oh god, there's so many people that have tackled Daredevil. So Chip Zdarsky is finally giving us his unique take, but the question is, how is that going to be, well, related to the character? He's always been kind of known for a little bit more fun and lighthearted fare. How can he do with the Devil of Hell's Kitchen? With Matt Murdock on the mend, Chip Zdarsky takes over control of Daredevil, the man without fear, and combined with Marco Checchetto, we are in for quite the treat. When we open up, we see a common bar. Matt Murdock is out there, meets and encounters this beautiful woman, and that is just a taste of what Chip Zdarsky is going to be able to offer as far as writing. The natural, casual flow of the conversation and how Matt handles everything just feels kind of right as far as the character. However, immediately after that, we dive into a flashback which really places an emphasis on Matt, his Catholicism, and his whole mental construct of how he works as Daredevil. Going back to his childhood, he was all about fairness in the eyes of God, whether the laws were just or not. He wanted to make sure that he was righting a wrong. That was his ideal. But sometimes the rules of man had to be followed, whether the rules of God applied or not. This is going to kind of give us a hint as to where Chip Zdarsky is going to be going with it. Of course, he follows up with Matt Murdock being a ladies' man sitting naked on his bed as this woman tries to make excuses to leave the blind man's house, and we get an internal monologue regarding what he's been feeling, while she is kind of talking about her own problems. But that is just a window dressing, as Matt doesn't necessarily feel fulfilled by these kind of actions. Immediately, you transition away to a crime scene where we actually get the introduction of a brand new character who is going to kind of play antagonist to Matt Murdock. He is going to be in hot pursuit, a fresh detective that is just transferred in from Chicago, Cole North. And this man is, I'm guessing, going to play a relatively large role, as he is a fan of justice, following the laws of man, not necessarily the laws of God. Somebody has to be held accountable, held actionable for these kind of things, because Daredevil is an addict. He's an addict for violence. He loves the idea of beating and bringing justice to individuals. That is what we kind of get the hints at. And while we take a look at more flashbacks from the history, grabbing that relationship with the man of God, the father that he has at his local church, we finally get back to Daredevil inside the costume. And what a beautiful shot it is. This full-page spread of Matt Murdock heading out into the city skyline. Marco Checchetto does a phenomenal job on this setup. The panel layout's great. The character design is good. The kinetic, dynamic nature of the character as he moves across the rooftops and struggles to get back up onto the building. You can tell that there's some compositional work and some real thought that goes into how he's representing a recovering Matt Murdock. So while we take a look at something that might be considered a routine robbery, that Daredevil's just going to go down and handle these guys, unfortunately, that's not the case. He's rusty, he's broken, he's recovering, he's careless, he's not as sharp as he once used to be. He is not ready for these kinds of things. He may have gone a little bit too harsh on somebody, maybe punched somebody a little bit too hard, knocked them around a little bit too much. The fire is starting to break out inside the liquor store. Things are going up in flames. He can't afford to stand around for the cops and try and fight this fire, so he makes his escape, leaving those men down next to the building, feeling like a failure, feeling like he needs to be better. He doesn't know how long he can continue to be Daredevil, whether it's his physical limitations, his mental limitations, or if we take a look at his confession, one of the first nights when he was this kind of Ronin-esque character with that black mask on, whether his convictions can handle this. And that's when we get the first insinuation from Zdarsky himself that Matt Murdock is an addict. He's addicted to the violence, he's addicted to the blood, he's addicted to the beating, he's addicted to bringing his own brand of justice to the streets. Of course, this is overlaid with Kingpin, who's now celebrating 1 year in office as mayor. He's looking at the news, seeing that Daredevil was on the scene, and witnessing that the third suspect, one of the men that was connected with a robbery that Daredevil tried to thwart and ended up lighting the building on fire, is dead. and this is just more ammunition for the Kingpin to take on the vigilante heroes of New York City. And that's how we leave episode number 1 of Daredevil, without getting into Chip Zdarsky's kind of backup story, which is a really smart and refreshing way to take a look at how Daredevil actually communicates with the world around him. Even though he doesn't necessarily have his sight, he gets to see the way the world is. The real heart of the story happens in the first 20-something pages. And what do I think about this? First off, let's talk about the art. And the art from Marco Checchetto, I can't really rave enough about it. I feel like this is going to be a really good team-up of Zdarsky and Checchetto, and if they have to bring on some guest artists, that's great. As long as the main books are done by Marco, I think that we are in for a phenomenal treat. As far as the writing, he's leaning heavily into the Catholic guilt, he's leaning heavily into the addiction to violence, and then also leaning into an additional character who's going to be bringing about a sense of justice and try to bring this modern-day morality to Matt Murdock. The recovery, the feeling of inadequacy, is going to drive Matt Murdock into this kind of hole, this shell, and basically turn him into a man that questions his own actions, which is going to be a really deep and introspective look into the character, or at least that's what seems to be in the first issue, or the implications that I pull from it. Is it going to be for everybody? I really hope so. As somebody that hasn't been a fan of Daredevil, even though, you know, Frank Miller and a lot of other writers have had really solid runs on the character, and he's one of the original Marvel characters as far as superheroes, it just hasn't really been one of my favorite reads. But with this kind of story, I really think that I can get into it. But I want to know what you guys think, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.